Good morning, everyone. Happy first day of spring. Happy cold first day of spring. I'm Joanne Bundy. I chair the Community Education Council that sponsors the bucket courses. And the Planning Committee and I welcome you to the bucket courses this morning. If you will take this moment to check your cell phone and make sure it's silenced, we'll all appreciate that. And believe me, if your cell phone goes off in the middle of JR's lecture, then a lot of people are going to be mad at you. So check that right now. You will notice that we have a new piece of property this morning, the lectern. This lectern is made by the craftsman Art Hyman. We needed to have a little lectern for that table for the convenience of our presenters. And Art found out about it, and he donated his materials and his time and his talents to putting together the lectern for us. And we greatly appreciate that, Art. And just to begin to express our gratitude, we have some free coupons for you for tuition for the bucket course. You will pass that back to Art. Thank you very much, Art. It's just terrific work.
Thank you.
And this morning is the first class of the 3-class series that Dr. J.R. Paulson will be teaching. The first 2 classes will be on finding the truth, and the third class will be on Songs of Confucius. I think most of you know Dr. Paulson. His day job is being the primary care taker at Grinnell Family Care. And in his spare time, he's a genius. So, please welcome Dr. J.R. Paulson.
Thank you, Joanne. Can you hear me in the back okay? Is it too loud, too soft? Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's too loud. Somebody control this? How's that? Is that better? Okay. It's a pleasure to be here, and I use this class today as an excuse to have some fun. I have a lot of interests, as you know, and one of the interests I have is medicine. But I was also a philosopher in a previous life, and I love philosophy. And I think I'm kind of a scientist at heart. And I'm also interested in religion. And the area where all these intersect is what I want to talk about today. And I'm inventing this course to do that, where these areas intersect. Science, medicine, religion, philosophy. All of you should have gotten your little test questionnaire, and we'd like you to fill it out. You don't have to put your name on it, which might change the data. People looking over at you, and what did she or she do? So it's anonymous, and we'd like you just, when you're done, just pass them up to the front so they don't have to go around. And then we're going to collect these, and for the next class we'll have tallied them. And I think it'll be interesting to see, and you'll be interested to see, how does everybody think in this class? What are your feelings about that? The second thing is, we get further into the class, particularly at the end of this class, it's going to be 2 parts, we'll analyze what you did in filling out this. You just filled it out plus in 0. But we're going to talk about, why did you make the decisions you made?
I can't do it.
Why did some of you just go check, check, and some of you did you have to think about? And what was going on when you were thinking about that? So with that brief introduction, let us proceed. How many people were at the class that I taught before on the truth? Raise your hand. All right. I can't believe you came back. So, I guess it's supposed to be able to see this thing. There we go. You have this in one of your handouts. This was our definitions of the truth that I tried to go over in the last class. And basically to review actual truths that are, we would call science, empirical truths. They're verifiable in the real world. That's one kind of truth. There are logical truths that we talked about in the last class. They're logic. You know, if A follows and B happens, then C must follow or must not follow. You don't need to do any experiments, or nobody has any argument about that. If you understand logic, certain truths are evident, they follow or they don't. The third is what we call ethical or ideal truths. These are about our values or what we ought to do. Should you do this? Should we have the death penalty? Should we not? Ought we help people that are less fortunate than we are? Those are moral and value questions. And we will get around to those in the second part. And then the fourth area is metaphysical truth. Transcendental, that is, the truth of fundamental reality, conceived as being partially or wholly transcended if perceived in actuality and experience. That's Webster's definition. Basically, this is the stuff that we're going to have fun with today. We get into the stuff that I took a whole class in college and graduate school called metaphysics. And what that was is a whole class. Metaphysics, that's beyond physics. That's stuff that's outside our senses, outside the world. These things that we can't, that are intangible. But we're going to find out and see that over time, that metaphysical sphere has been shrinking over time and is more amenable to science. You really do have to point this at this. We're trying to move us up this ladder to accomplish thinking. And this was a handout that we had in our last class, of course. This is a slide from the last class, which has some truth to it. I put this slide in as a review from last time also. One person's version of the truth can be totally different from another person's version of the truth. Some cases, yes. Other times, The truth is the truth. I put this Gandhi quote in for you because I just love it. So we're going to think about thinking. What's going on inside our heads when we process things? It's going to be about ghosts, aliens, friendly, or scary. Alien abductions. It's going to be about God. Old picture, Angelo. This is the real God picture today. He's sitting there checking everybody's email, he's twittering you back, or he's on Facebook, you know, had to get an updated slide. Recognize this character, the devil, and in your questions we'll talk about him. Jesus, oh, don't go there, let's not talk about religion. It's going to be covered in here. Shiva, if we were in India, we'd be talking about that. Talk about conspiracy theory. For some time I had this suspected Reginald of wrongdoings. Now I believe my own life to be in danger. I love that. But cats can get paranoia too. But conspiracy theory. Wake the blank up, America, and face the truth. 9/11 was an inside job. Everybody hear about the conspiracy theories?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are they out there? Why do people believe these things? How about this one?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory. Why do people do this? I like this one. After Williams died, July 5th, Ted Williams, famous baseball, body was taken by private jet to Scottsdale for this cryotherapy place. They separated his head, called neural separation. they put his head in one spot and they froze him. So sometime they will bring him back or whatever. I don't know how they're going to do that, but we'll get into that a little bit maybe. What about this? Reading people's minds? Can you read their minds? Can they use? Is this a bunch of malarkey? What about this ESP? We have cards, and then you tell me what card I'm going to do with you. Some people can do this or have an ability to do this. How can they do that? Why do they do that? That's what's going on here. So the technical lecture is called The Cognitive Basis of Clinical Decision Making and the Architecture of a New Meta-Narrative. But basically, let's just call it, why do we make the decisions we do? So the lessons I want to try to teach to the class are that there's plenty of data that demonstrate that we make fundamental flawed decisions due to unconscious biases. We operate on a belief-dependent realism model, and therefore data does not change our minds. Isn't it frustrating sometimes to have people that, if you say, oh, I'm just going to give them the facts, and it doesn't make any difference. They don't believe it. We make systemic errors in judgment and choice. We'd be wise to understand the role of cognitive biases and preferred cognitive styles in our lives. There's better ways to peel a banana. I forgot my banana today. Linda, did you bring a banana in your purse? Rats. I'll show you. So, questions. Why do we believe what we believe? Why do others believe what they do? How can so many people believe such crazy stuff? Why is Washington so dysfunctional? Why are adolescent brains so irrational? Why can't you ever resolve certain arguments with your spouse? Why is it often pointless and frustrating to argue with someone who is at the opposite end of your religious or political spectrum? Why do doctors and patients commonly miscommunicate on very important life and death issues? How do you make decisions on what to believe? Anybody want to volunteer? A person of mine that I mentioned this question to said, well, I find out what the problem is, and I gather data, and then I look at make a rational decision on what the answer or what the thing is. Right? I mean, that's kind of what we think we do. And I'm here to say, nah, we don't. How do you do it?
I base the decision on the benefit of believing, which is often scientific, but we all came here and paid money, and we all agreed that it has value, but no one here really thinks it has value. So that's my benefit of believing. I got it.
He wants you to repeat the question. I don't know if I understand the question. The benefit, he looks at a question of the benefit of believing what you're going to, what's the secondary gain in what the outcome is? It doesn't have benefit.
I don't believe money has value, but all these people do.
So he says he doesn't believe money has value, but everybody else does.
So I got in when I paid, yeah.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how to classify that, by the way.
We'll come back to that. Okay, did you all turn in these? Good. I don't want to prejudice you because I want to see how you guys all, this is what the data show on a Pew poll. 2009. That's 2,000, that's a pretty good sample. So this is how people in the United States, what they said on the beliefs. So I find that interesting. And I find that interesting.
Oh, that's even more absurd.
And I find it interesting that more people believe in the devil than believe in theory of evolution. So, what about Britons? Here's a survey, Reader's Digest in 2006. They gave them these questions. Reading other people's thoughts. Premonitions of events. Can feel when someone's looking at them. Sense when a loved one was in trouble. Have seen a ghost. NDEs are near-death experiences. We've all read about theirs. Those, the people that have almost died and they've floated up or they've gone to heaven or whatever, and belief in that. Pretty high. So it isn't just these beliefs just in the United States. How can we explain this wide divergence of belief? How can seemingly rational people often believe such, from our perspective, such irrational beliefs? What is truly the truth? Why does it matter what we believe? Well, what's your belief on homosexuality? Well, it's kind of important. Because if you believe certain things in homosexuality, then you may not want a homosexual teacher. Today in the news, you want a homosexual being a Boy Scout leader. Should homosexual boys be allowed in the Boy Scouts? Big issue right now. So your belief kind of depends on how you're going to come down on that. What's your belief on the role of women? If you're here, or if you're in Iraq, or if you'll find in Sung Dynasty China. What's your belief on WMDs in Iraq? Gee, 10 years ago, that was kind of an important belief, wasn't it? And you believe that Iran has a nuclear weapon now. Because if you believe certain things, certain consequences and things will follow from that. So this is not just academic UFOs and stuff. The process of believing in UFOs or conspiracy theories or these things are all, I'm going to show and weave on the next two classes, are all basically the same processes. What do you believe regarding gun control? What do you believe causes blindness? You may say macular degeneration, okay? But I'll show later in the thing that one of the causes of blindness that was believed for many years was masturbation causes blindness.
Oh, Lord.
If you are born blind in Tibet, as the movie Blind Sight showed, all of the kids around there that are born that were blind are all pariahs. They're all just outcasts. They're hated. People spit on them and just kick them aside. They're just little street urchins because they're blind. You know why? Because they believe, the Buddhists at that time, in reincarnation, and that you must have done something pretty horrible in your previous existence for you to be punished to be blind in this. So they are punishing you in this life for something they hypothesized in the last life. Isn't that horrible? So beliefs do make a difference on things like what causes blindness. The cultural difference here. What about, do you believe about justice in the afterlife? Is justice here, or, well, it doesn't make any difference because in the afterlife, God or somebody or Jesus, that's when punishment justice will occur. Or at least, as far as about how we think. It's based on evolutionary evidence, good sociologic and psychological data and studies, and now is augmented with functional MRI scans of your brain, which is neat, because now we can take a look at your brain and watch what it's doing when it's thinking. And can allow us to clean up our thinking and bring us closer to finding the truth, if we really want to. So, I should have had this slide in the first thing. Park your sacred cows at the door. Because in our talk, there are no sacred cows. There are, but we just don't want to have them here. Francis Bacon in 1620 was on to this. For the mind of man is far from the nature of a clear and equal glass, wherein the beams of things should reflect according to their true incidence. Nay, it's rather like an enchanted glass, full of superstition and imposture, if not to be delivered and reduced. Voltaire, every man is the creature of the age in which he lives. Very few are able to raise themselves above the ideas of the times. Back in history, I think Voltaire was pretty sharp.
That's right.
And of course, in the age of enlightenment. The assumptive world is a broad set of fundamental beliefs that include how we believe people will behave, how events should unfold, and our ability to influence events. These assumptions give structure to events in an individual's world, allow each individual to plan and predict, and contribute how people and events in the world are perceived and understood. This is probably the most important quote that I want to do for the introduction. We form our beliefs, and you have this in your handout, for a variety of subjective, personal, emotional, and psychological reasons in the context of environments created by family, friends, colleagues, culture, society at large. After forming our beliefs, we then defend, justify, and rationalize them with a host of intellectual reasons, cogent arguments, and rational explanations. So remember one thing out of the class to get your money's worth. Beliefs come first, explanations for beliefs follow. And that's a hypothesis I didn't prove. And a lot of it is based on Michael Schirmer's book. So there are different ways of thinking, different heuristics. Heuristics are mental methods of solving a problem through intuition, trial and error, or other informal methods. Once we form beliefs and make commitments to them, we maintain a number of these heuristic thinkings and cognitive biases to guarantee that they are correct. Why and how these occur is the basis of the class. So the nature of cognitive biases and decision making. I was a teacher once and I love these cartoons. Find X.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
Name a pair of vertical triangles. Briefly explain what hard water is. Okay? Nice physics problem here. You got this weight over there. It's going to slide down here. They want to know all this physics up. But it says, oh, I can't do that. No, there's an elephant in the way. Burl would like that. I think you got 0 credit for that one. This one, algebra question. Tracy is wrong. Use an example to show that Tracy is wrong. She's a woman. Of course she's wrong. Explain why phosphorus trichloride is polar. I made it that way. I'm not making this stuff up. Kids did. But, okay, so what we think is articulated as words, and they're related to a frame. So all this thinking has to do with words, what words mean, and their frames of reference. We also operate on the idea that our senses don't mislead us. We already went over that before. Cognitive unconscious. It's a system of frames or beliefs in our brains of thinking which can mislead us. They're going on under the surface that we're not aware of. Describe the picture that's printed on the next slide. Okay, what did you see? What did you say, Mary Lou? 2 triangles. You saw a black triangle and then another white triangle going the other way, correct? Now, use your hand and cover up part of that. Well, you don't see all the triangle, and you'll say, is there really a triangle there, a white triangle? Answer is no. Is there really a black triangle there? No. Your brain wants to fill that in. Your brain wants to connect the lines, and it wants to make the white, even though it's, but if you just cover part of it up, you see, you wouldn't say that, would you? So our brain just automatically wants to find a pattern. You use some reflexive thinking that made sense out of this complexity. And it's easy for us, the law of least effort. You fail to activate the slower expert thinking. Even now that we're aware of it, it's still tough to turn it off, isn't it? We still see that triangle. Okay, and this one, if you got a pencil and a piece of paper, you don't all have to do this, but it's fun. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show it to you for a couple seconds, and then I just want you to write down what you saw. Draw what you see. Can anybody tell me what they think they saw? Or what they saw? Yes?
In the spring.
Ah. How many ins did you say, Dr. Crimson?
2.
Good. The question, the answer that Dr. Person gave was, he said, Paris in the spring. And there was also a triangle around there.
A diamond.
Now, when I did this up at a test at Mayo Clinic, I got it wrong. I wrote Paris in the spring. Because my brain wanted Paris in the spring. I didn't go Paris in the spring. And I connected the top of I didn't see the top of that triangle wasn't, or the parallelogram wasn't all there.
Not parallel.
or the triangle, or the square was not completed. But you see how our brain wants to just process stuff? Okay, what's this? It's a banana. How do most of you peel bananas?
Top to the
I wanted to have,
To the bottom.
okay, how many of you peel a banana from this end? Raise your hand. How many of you peel a banana from this end? Okay. Now, who knows how to peel bananas the best? What people or species? Monkeys. That's their job, right? How do monkeys, and they're gonna figure out the best way to do it. Right? Time tested. And guess how monkeys do it? They peel it from this end. You just squish it, and it comes apart, and you peel it very easily. So all of us are doing our bananas wrong, because everybody else does it wrong, and that's why we were taught to do it. So you see the thing in our thinking? I'm telling you, you learned today another thing for your money. A new way to peel a banana. Just gonna tell you. Okay. From the other end, try it, it works. Okay, what do you see here? Come on, guys, let's, okay, what did you see? A car was stopped.
She was crossing the street.
Woman is crossing the street.
Another man is coming towards her.
Another man is coming toward her. So she said she's crossing the street. Woman's crossing the street. We're seeing her posterior end, right? Car's coming up. Anything else you people would add?
First under her arm.
Ah, how many people saw the funky dog? Yeah, very good. Some of you are sharp. There is a dog driving that car. Oh. Oh, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of focus not on the dog, but again, you see how we go into data and we look at something, we zoom in. Our brain just naturally goes to where it goes. And we can miss a important piece of information like a driving dog, right? That should be the thing that, wait a minute, forget the lady. Okay? Biology of belief. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself and that you are the easiest person to fool. Richard Feynman, very famous physicist. So why do we think the way we do, even if it's often an error? As animals, we are innately driven by patternicity as an animal, but as a higher animal, we humans are also innately driven by antigenicity. So let's talk about that. Pretend we're back a million years ago in the savannah in Africa, where our ancestors were. And you're walking along and you hear a rustling in the grass. So you hear this rustling. Now, your brain goes, that's a rustle. I wonder, is that just the wind moving the grass? Or is that a tiger? Right? I mean, that's the thinking process that goes on in that ancestor back there. Well, you got to make a choice. And how you choose will make a difference. So, the errors in thinking, type 1 error in cognition known as false positives, or believing something that is real when it is not. So that says, I think it's a tiger, I better get the heck out of here, and it wasn't a tiger, it was just the wind. Okay? You made an error in judgment. You were wrong, correct? Type 2 errors, known as false negatives, or believing something is not real when it is. That's just the wind. You need by a saber-tooth tiger. Well, I guess they didn't have them over there, but okay, that's an error. You made a cognitive error. You thought something was a false negative. It really was a tiger. You see the difference? Okay, so this is associative learning. It occurs in all animals from bacteria to Homo sapiens. It's the tendency to find meaningful patterns in both meaningful and meaningless noise. Telling the difference is the problem. Which do you think is the default setting? What is the cost? Whenever the cost for believing that a false pattern is real is less than the cost of not believing a real pattern, natural selections will favor the patternicity. So, if you think it's a tiger, even though it's not, you're probably going to survive.
Yes.
If you choose the other way and say, that's just the wind, and you screw up, you're on Darwin's list for extinction. It's that simple. But which one is Mother Nature going to propagate over all the eons?
Yeah.
It's going to select out all these idiots that are going, oh, that's probably just the wind, right?
Yep.
So we are biased to make the positive association between wind and animal. When I wash my fish and come to my fish tank every morning when I clean them, or I feed them, I put stuff in, and they're feeding. Then all of a sudden, they'll all swarm over here. And then they come back and eat some more, and they all. Whoosh. And I noticed that to get ready for this class. One spooks, and all the rest spook. One spooks, the rest spook. They're all different species. Is there an evolutionary rationale for that?
Interesting.
Yeah, what if there's a piranha around? You see, it's better to be spooked falsely than it is to goof up. But there's also the rationale for superstition. So this anecdotal thinking comes naturally, but scientific or critical thinking requires training. Anybody know what this is?
Oh, yes. Tap. Feed.
Skinner box. Remember B.F. Skinner in the 60s? All these experiments with pigeons, right? And he would give pigeons rewards when they would peck and do certain things. And he could train pigeons to do everything. He even trained pigeons to be able to go and missile warhead. He did, but other people did, where they could peck on a gyroscope. They'd have a picture of like Berlin there, and if the picture of Berlin got off, the pigeon would keep picking on the center of Berlin, and that would right the missile. So they had all these sneaky things for pigeons to do. You can train pigeons and rats to do a lot of stuff. But he found that if he did a type of reinforcement called random interval rewards or variable interval reinforcement, he said the bird behaves as if there were a causal relationship between its behavior and the presentation of food, although such a relation is lacking. In other words, the pigeon is sitting there, and all of a sudden, let's say the pigeon turns around, and then all of a sudden the tray opens up and food comes down. The pigeon goes, whoa, food, eats it. Well, the pigeon goes, that's interesting. So the pigeon's turning around, where's the food? Doesn't it? Turns around, you see what I'm saying? If the pigeon was standing on one leg and the food drops down, what does the pigeon do? Associates, you see? And the fact that the pattern doesn't happen every time gets these real screwy type reinforcement patterns. Okay, so, isn't that exactly what happens with humans and our superstitious behavior? We're just like the pigeons, aren't we? Yeah. Duh, what's this? Intermittent reinforcement, isn't it? I feel right? So we're not any different than a pigeon in our behavior for this intermittent reinforcement. Or this one. I'm not superstitious either, but those were the 3 days Harris wore his lucky socks. Gee. I mean, yeah. Anybody know who this is? It's Professor Lawrence. Why has he got these geese following him? Because, the geese were imprinted. This is the famous story of imprinting in geese. When they're born, they form pattern. And the first pattern they form is, who's mama? And they form pattern on whoever the first person is there. So if it's a dog, they think the dog's the mother. They thought Lawrence was the mother. So these geese are following him all around. They are programmed to get this pattern of the first thing. And it stays with them all their life. Patternicity. there's some gulls that peck on the mother's beak to have her regurgitate food. And so they made some models of the gull. They made one, put this up here. They didn't get so many pecks. They got a pencil and put a blue dot down here, and boy, they got a lot more. So there's something, the gulls are patterning this long thing with a spot on it. And the longer the thing is, the more they're into it. As humans and primates, we are really tuned into facial patterns. This is how we communicate with other people in our species before we had language, was reading their face. Today it's called reading body language. Tremendous. And it's just amazing how much data you can get from this. But, anybody would know what this is? It's supposed to be a face on Mars.
Oh, for
People
sakes, nonsense.
use their imagination, they say, well, there's a face, this rock formation on Mars, and a big deal in our science journals, is there a face on Mars? Well, let's see if you think there's a face on Mars or not. Anyone know what this is? The Shroud of Turin. Right. And the real shroud is on the left. And I don't know about you, I don't see a lot of pattern there. But if you take a picture of it and then show the negative, this is the negative.
Wow.
Ah, so they didn't even look at the real thing. Oh, the negative, you're supposed to see Jesus in there. Do you or don't you? But again, see what our minds or facial recognition is really important. So we're looking for it all over the place. What about this one? To me, it looks like a burned pizza bottom. But some people sent this in. There's Jesus again. Here's his hair, here's his eyes, here's his mouth. You can find Jesus every place in your food. Isn't this out there? Right? Like there's something like woo going on. Well, our human species wants to find faces. What about that one? Who's that? Okay. But look if I turn it upside down. Oh, a little different, isn't it?
Weird.
So here we do our first look. You see how our face, everything looks okay. It puts him normally. That's what our brain wants to do. So Obama looked good, even though he's upside down. But then when this way, our brain is more discriminating. We go, ooh, something's wrong with his mouth and his eyes. So the part of the brain that does this, I'm not going to go into too much neuroanatomy, but it's this area here called the fusiform gyrus. That's what we know, the spot in the brain that does facial recognition. If that gets injured, people cannot identify faces. So if someone had an injury to the brain in that part, they would come in and even if your wife or your husband, they wouldn't know who you are. They could not tell anybody, any of you, from your facial recognition. They would have no clue who any of you are. But they're perfectly fine and everything else. So we know the spots where these occur in the brain. I used this example before.
Yeah.
How many see the young girl? How many see the old girl? How many see the young girl?
Yeah.
How many see the old? Hey. How many see both? Good. But, so here's the old hag, here's her nose, here's part of her nose, here's her mouth, here's her eye.
That's her hair.
The young gal, here's the plume, here's her eyelash, here's her chin, it's a side profile, here's her ear. Ah, same reality. Totally different takes on it, which I mentioned in my last class. Linking of two events, association, randomness, or cause and effect. Example, vaccines and autism. You're familiar with the big spiel about that, what's going on? A lot of people don't get vaccinated because, why? They get autism. A lot of people believe this. I have some in my practice. They won't vaccinate their kids because of autism. And this is what some data they say. Oh, okay. Gee. Look at autism. And the black line is vaccinations. Well, that looks pretty, that looks pretty close, don't they, to you folks?
Yeah.
But that's also the black line is the number of cell phones, the number of McDonald's, the U.S. deer population. Yeah, it's vaccines, the number of Facebook members, the number of times politicians lie, you know. It's just, you see? So just because there's dissociation, all these other things would cause the same line. If you want to learn more about that and our bodies and our brains, having trouble with numbers and concept, this book I can highly recommend, The Drunkard's Walk on Randomness. Do a couple more and then we'll go to break. Patternicity and control. There's a strong correlation between how much control people feel in their pattern finding. People with an internal focus of control have much more skepticism and a low belief in ESP, etc. Those who feel controlled from without and powerless have higher rates of belief in paranormal activity, superstitions, spiritualism, and mystical experience. As the level of uncertainty in the environment increases, so does the level of superstitious behavior. That's interesting. Okay, how many people see patterns here? Anybody see pattern in either one of these?
Yeah, canoe. Someone in a canoe.
People are seeing, pointing. Mary Lou, what do you see on the left?
I see a sphere with a band around it.
A sphere with a band around it. So here's the band. Maybe it's Saturn. I mean, you see, does everybody see that, or how would I point out? So maybe around here. Yeah. Okay.
To do with the band and.
And how many see something over in here?
Ooh, that's not easy.
That's a little difficult.
Whoa.
I can see eyes and.
Anybody? Anything?
Let's see a
Good.
face. With eyes.
Why did I say good? There is a pattern of Saturn here. This is totally random, generated by a computer. It's random noise.
But I can still find.
So you guys are doing very well. So let's take a break here, and then we'll come back and talk about baseball players, superstitions, and any superstitions that you have. And yeah, so that'll be fun. Okay?
You're taking your chairs. JR has a lot left to tell us this morning, so we'll get right to the second half of his first class. Dr. J.R. Paulson.
Okay. Thank you, Joanne. Well, let's continue on superstition. Baseball players. Any baseball players in here? Well, most of us that have been baseball players know that there are a lot of rituals that baseball players have, even professionals. But they don't have any on fielding. You just, when you go out to the field, you don't have many rituals or things to do. Reason is, 95% of the time, you're going to be successful, catch the ball. When you bat, your chances of getting a hit are less than 500. They're only, 200, 300 batting average. So that's one reason why they have all these different, it's just fun to watch the game and see all the different routines that batters will have. With what? Because they've got a hit, when they did this and that, they continue to do that behavior. But it's because they don't have control over, as much control over the batting as they do with the fielding. Anxiety and lack of control increases superstition. You ask people, which on these dice rolls, which is more likely? Getting a 2-2-2 or a 5-1-3? What do you think most people say?
2-2-2.
Which is more likely?
5-1. Oh, I see.
2-2-2.
Numbers.
What's the answer? It's the same. It's equal. It's equal.
We're
But
talking about rolling one.
rolling, you roll a die, and what do you get? You get a 2. You roll it again, what do you get? You get a 2. Roll it again, you get a 2. Okay, I do the experiment again. I roll it, I get a 5. Roll it again, I get a 1. I get a 3. And you say, well, what's more likely to happen? Okay? We think, wow, 2-2-2, that's pretty well. You see how our brain wants to do that, but they're equal probability. Rough seas ahead. Oh, let's go back. I want to do this one more example here. Story of a job interview. They showed people going for a job interview. And they had the actors like do something stupid, like they'd have the guy would go around and jump like this before you go into the door. Or a girl would take a rabbit foot out of her pocket or purse and do that. And then they'd go into the interview for this job interview. Okay, so that's the behavior that everybody observed. Then they had this group of people, and they said, "You want to watch this? And we're going to ask you later, did any of this stuff that they did before, whatever their super, did that make a difference on getting a job or not?" Okay? Well, one group, they primed before, and they said, before you see this tape, I want you to think of a situation, a detailed situation where you had really control. You were in control of everything, and it was really, you just had all this control. We want you to think about that. In this group, we want you to think about something that you had no control of, some bad situation, it doesn't have to be bad, but you just were not in control. Like wild class, I don't know, or just something that was really, you think about that. Okay, now we're going to go see the video of this. Both groups see the video, and then we say, well, what did you think? The group that thought about control first said, it wasn't any correlation before the jump they did jumping around. The people who just thought about lack of control before they saw the video said, no, I think that really had something to do with them getting that job. And if they didn't get the job, they started to think, well, I think that person was treated unfairly. I think there was a conspiracy going on with the boss, that he was in cahoots with you guys. Isn't that interesting? The same exact thing that they're saying, different on their brain, primed with they have control or don't have control. Rough seas ahead. What about stock? All our rational stock guys. Take this group of stock guys, and they said, okay, we want you to look at this company, B, we're going to show you the portfolio, and say if this is going to be a good buy. So you got all the data in there. We're going to give this group, and we're going to give you the same portfolio. On you, we tell you, we read you this little short article. It says, rough seas ahead in the stock market. It could be up and down, Iraq, and what's going on in Cyprus. It could be rough out there. You folks, we tell you, the United States is doing great. The stock market's as higher it's ever been. It's going to be smooth sailing in the stock markets. We give you both these portfolios, and then say, how many are you going to invest in company B? How many are you going to invest in company B? Major difference. The people, it's the same thing, but the investors, the professional investors, totally different. Oh, that's a really bad one. If they think rough seas ahead, that's a bad investment. But it's the same data that they got. These are professional investors. But that's interesting. Less anxiety and better recovery with information pre-surgery. I love this because I had a patient came in the office 2 days ago. And she's a very anxious patient. I don't know if she's here, but we won't have to mention her. Hopefully she will not pop up. But had a biopsy, needle-directed biopsy. Oh, kind of frightening thing for obviously looking for breast cancer, right? I asked her how her experience was, and it came out benign, so that was all good. She said, oh, I was just a nervous wreck. And I go, why? Well, because the cancer? No, because I thought they were going to have to put me to sleep and do all this stuff. If they find something, they're going to knock me out, and they're going to start working on me and all this. And she says, and they just did it, and I was awake the whole time, and they did the needle biopsy, and they go, bye, Mrs. So-and-so, your doctor will have the thing in 2 days. And I said, wow. Well, we found out that your anxiety level is way up if you don't have information. So if you give people information, no, they're not going to put you to sleep. They're going to do this, they're going to do this, they're not going to do this, they're going to do this. Just having that knowledge, people do better in the surgery and they recover better. With the same thing, isn't so our brains are pretty powerful in that. What are the cultural ramifications of 9/11? What would you predict? Chaos, uncontrol, our society. Perfect time to read conspiracy theories. If everything's calm, you don't need conspiracy theories, but now we're threatened other people and is there a plot? We're going to talk about that a lot with the next part of the course. The second big point that I want to make is agenticity. So let's go back to the savannah in Africa, tens of thousands of years ago, not maybe millions. And the bigger-brained hominids, Homo sapiens, discerns the difference between inanimate objects, or forces like the wind and rocks, and intentional agents, like a predator, that want to kill him. But he also develops what we call a theory of mind, TOM. We've all had this when we were growing up. I talked to my wife about times when she had this. And we can imagine other men and women having the same desires and intentions as we do. And he can project himself and his feelings and motives into others. Remember when we realized that, geez, other people must kind of think like me or feel like me? You have no proof for that, right? But they kind of act, and we think that they have the same mind as we do. Understand that? Get that principle? Okay. And maybe we don't think the rock does it, but we know people do because they act the same. We just think they have a theory of that. Very important. Antigenicity is the tendency to infuse patterns with meaning and intention and agency. Because we have a will, we have intention. We often impart the patterns we find with agency and intention. It's easy to believe that these intentional agents control the world, often from the top down. This can clearly give rise to a world of souls, spirits, ghosts, gods, demons, angels, intelligent design, and conspiracy theories. Agenticity, combined with our tendency to find meaning in meaningless noise, forms the cognitive basis of shamanism, paganism, animism, polytheism, monotheism, and all the modes of new and old spiritualism. In other words, we impart. Imagine way back in the earlier civilizations, and just study today, other societies and Indian cultures, the spirits in the wind, spirits in this is all these things that we don't understand when it thunders and there's agency, somebody's doing stuff. We impart that. That's different than just seeing a pattern. We also have what's called essentialism. Bruce Hood at the University of Bristol, a psychologist, in his book Supersense, sees our tendency also to believe that objects, animals, and people contain an essence, something that's at the core of their being and makes them what they are. This had evolutionary value, such as the bad essences of things that were associated with disease and illness, rotten smelling food or foul water. Avoiding these had survival value, right? You don't have a science theory, you just know, this not have a good essence about it, right? This food, it's got some bad stuff about it. See how we would attribute that? That was good, because it kind of kept you out of trouble. Children, they believe in agency. Take a look at a kid's picture of the sun or the moon. Do they just draw a circle? They put a little happy face in it, don't they, usually? Right? So kids, we did, when we were younger, we believed in agency in the sun. It's smiley, it's happier, trees or inanimate things had a person. Genital-shaped foods, believed to enhance sexual potency. Hood's work with heart transplants. 33% believe they got more than a heart. What do I mean by that? We've read stories about this. You get a heart transplant, and then your personality of the donor, particularly if you find out about the donor, this was a young girl or a boy, and people, I mean, it causes some serious psychological things for some people. Because we feel there's some essence. You see, so we got more, that's what I mean by more than the heart that we got. And, for example, in a group, the 20 Faces test, they showed some prospective heart transplant people. Here's 20 faces. And here they are. Which one of these people will you take a heart from? You know, and everybody, would kind of vote. And then they said, oh yeah, by the way, half of these are felons and have killed people. What do the people say? A lot of them. I don't want that heart. Correct? Now medically, scientifically, is there any heart difference there? No. But you feel that strong? Can't you almost sense that? You know, that you're getting this, how much more you're getting? That's how ingrained this essence and this patternicity is in us. Some more examples. Mr. Rogers' sweater. People believe if you put on Mr. Rogers' sweater, you're a better person. That means you can transfer positive things. The author of one of these books on the brain, who's a very proclaimed skeptic, was going to go this big presentation he had to give. And earlier he was in a bike shop, and he saw this Lance Armstrong stuff. This was a few years ago. And obviously, and Lance Armstrong was great, live strong, and so he bought some yellow rimmed socks and a Live Strong t-shirt. Put those suckers on, put the t-shirt under his other shirt, he goes in the presentation. He just does, does great. And he gets out and, what do you kind of think? Like, the essence of wearing Lance Armstrong endorsed stuff. Now, how would that work if he did that today? A little bit of data change there, isn't it? Now, all of a sudden. But you see, the socks, whether they're yellow rimmed or what the hell that shirt says, has nothing to do with anything, right? But you see how strong we believe that? How do we treat the objects of a deceased person? Do we have that those objects or that sweater or that thing has a reverence, it has something? Art.
You know why he always wore a sweater? His arms were covered with tattoos, and he didn't want the children to see them.
The answer the art gave was, why did Lance Armstrong always wear a shirt?
No. Mr.
Why did
Rogers.
who? Mr. Rogers. Oh, because I thought Lance Armstrong always had a shirt. Mr. Rogers. He had tattoos. Learn something every day.
He's also a highly decorated Army veteran.
Wow.
He won the Silver Star.
A lot of things to not know about Mr. Rogers. But marketing. Michael Jordan shoes, shirts, etc. You see how that's going to work? What are your feelings of authenticity or superstitions? Anybody here have any superstitions? No. Me, sports watching. Last week, I'm watching Michigan playing Indiana. And Michigan's ahead, but Indiana's coming back in basketball. And I'm sitting in this chair in my attic. But when they start losing, I'm going to go over to this other chair there. And because they seem to do better when I'm in that chair. They still lost, but I'm going to do that. When I was a kid and playing basketball, I remember in 7th or 8th grade, our basketball team went over to play Catholic school. And guy gets fouled and he goes to the line to shoot and he goes, and I go, what the? That's not Catholic. What do you think I'm doing? Oh, God's going to help him in the basket. As a kid I'm going, right. Cross himself is going to make him more free throws. But then they said, well, God's going to help him because he's Catholic. And I thought, well, that's not fair. Our team is, why would we want to have God do that? Yeah, very good.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
What is the difference between essence, the center of a person, and a soul?
Ah, okay. Essence and soul. The question is, what is the difference between essence and a soul? The soul will be something that lives on after us. And in our second part of the class, we're going to talk about soul and afterlife. That is where some of our personality, our beingness, our whatever makes us usness, will go on in after we leave this life and we leave this body. So soul is much more inclusive. So maybe have a soul a little bit as essence. But wearing Mr. Rogers' sweater, we don't, it's not like Mr. Rogers is still around. Yes, sir?
How do you differentiate between superstition and the power of positive thinking for things that make you feel better about whatever it is you're going to do?
How do...
Does the super, like wearing a certain shirt or whatever, if that makes you feel like you're going to be more successful, do you not have a better chance of success if you feel like you're going to succeed?
Oh, absolutely. The placebo effect is really strong. It's a placebo effect in drugs. It's a placebo effect. So the question was on superstition is if we do that and we wear the sweater and we do better, it makes us feel better, isn't that good or does that actually make us do better? And the answer is often yes. Likewise, if you wear something that you're going to fail or have a preconception that we're going to do bad, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I just want to show you the error in our thinking of the cause and effect just by the linking. Okay. What types of people are more prone to superstition? This is supposed to be someone levitating. You see them on their back off the couch there. Ooh, paranormal activity 3. If you want to turn the lights down a little bit, we can see, get scared. I love this stuff. I love science fiction, and Linda knows. I like paranormal activity, exorcism, stuff like that, because I like the stretches my brain. And that's what I'm giving this talk about anyways. Everybody see remember The Exorcist? And why was The Exorcist so scary? To me, it wasn't just scary because of this. It was scary for me to think about the possibility of the devil really being in somebody. You know, that really, and is there a chance that that could happen? And I would never have been, you know, an absolutist. But when I saw that movie, you know, I thought, no. But the way they did it, it's just like, ooh, maybe this stuff could, you know, just that little bit of air for belief makes that work on some of us. At least it did on me. Santas. Yeah. Ouija boards. Anybody ever use these? Love these Ouija boards. People believe in these. I went on the internet the other night and Ouija board, pull up a YouTube and they're going around and is there someone in the room? And it goes to yes. What's his name? You know, Z. Oh, you know, they got their hands on it. Z. Oh, Zozo. That's interesting. And then all of a sudden one of the persons starts, where their hands start shaking and she starts going like this and it goes on the floor and they take a video over and then the video goes off. I went, okay. So something out there besides us. How do we explain those out-of-body experiences? Visits by others, spirits, or even God. If they are truly subjective, how can we argue against those who have them? Clearly not everyone who has such an experience is lying, just imagining the event, or crazy. Or are they? History is filled with thousands of accounts of these experiences, from saints to atheists. What's going on here? Why is this concept of agenticity so ingrained? So we're changing here a little bit to say, what about these experiences that people have? You know, what's going on with those? Although we are not even close to explaining all these phenomena, as time goes on, more and more are explainable and amenable to scientific scrutiny. Less and less are out there. As more and more experiences are found to arise within our brain. As has been the history of science over the centuries, less and less phenomena are found to be metaphysical or explainable by reliance on agents or beings outside of ourselves. The discipline of science and rational thinking are the only tools to help us analyze, clarify, and if found to correct, verify our beliefs. So think about 100, 200, 400 years ago, how much stuff was paranormal, with spirits in it. As we understand forces in nature, we understand physics, we understand chemistry, a lot of this woo-woo stuff is like, oh yeah, we can explain that now. Oh yeah. we can explain it now. But there's still a lot of stuff going on out there, particularly when we get into these things that we just mentioned. Millions of Americans, particularly women, that's interesting, women, share paranormal beliefs and experiences that don't fit under any religious umbrella, says this sociologist from Baylor. 52% of people surveyed say they believe in prophetic dreams. More than 40% agree that places can be haunted and that ancient civilizations, such as Atlantis, once existed. So women's brains, that's interesting. Women, why are you guys a little more susceptible to this? Are you more sensitive to the world out there? I don't know. So I had to try to draw up what I thought was a man and a woman's brain. So this was my analysis of the male-female brain. Actually, there's teleological evidence for my drawings, if you want to hear it later. Another book.
When are we gonna hear that?
Oh, you want to hear that now? Okay. And man, think about it. Nature, we're only good for one thing, reproducing and getting off the planet. So for us, nature's going to put all the, I think, the stuff on, having sex and, getting that other female impregnated so there can be more of us. So that's why I think we got the big sex ceremony. Okay, my theory for women is chocolate. If you're a woman and you're pregnant and you don't know when your next meal's coming along and you're out foraging in the stuff, if you tune into foods that are high in sugar, high in fat content, those women that like that stuff are going to be selected over women who, I'm a vegan, forget that fat stuff and forget that sugar stuff. I'm just eating veggies. Who's going to go on to carry the babies? I'm serious. I think they'll be selected out. The women who are a little overweight, that got a little extra fat to live on, are going to survive the pregnancy and go on to have more babies. So that's my theory. But thanks for asking. I was just thinking on my feet. Okay. A book, Paranormal Activity, by some sociologists. 2/3 of people believe in the possibility of one paranormal item. Could be astrology, UFOs, psychic abilities. Atlantis, Bigfoot, haunted houses. People from more conservative religious traditions tend to be less willing to believe in the paranormal than those more moderate traditions. We're going to have to explain that, because there's going to be a thing between religion, we're going to talk about this class and this class, what's the role of religion? So here we're saying people who are more religious, they're not into this ESP stuff as much. We'll have to figure out why. People who are more moderately religious tend to believe in the paranormal. If you're not religious at all, and you're atheistic, or you're really religious, it's not likely you believe any of this stuff. But if you're kind of in that middle, there's a difference. So just one data point was people who attend a church once a month, much more likely to believe in the paranormal than someone who attends church on a weekly basis. So yeah, we're going to have to explain that. But that's interesting finding. Ooh, look at that ghost coming down the stairs. Right? Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is. Another study. This is over in England. 2009. 1 to 4 people in the UK believe in ghosts. Londoners being the most common. But it's interesting. His experiment involved asking participants to read 1 of 4 versions of a newspaper article about paranormal investigators. So they had these people, they'd read 4 accounts of ghosts found in Barley Castle. Okay? And then they'd ask them, do you believe in that? And they found out that the ones that read the story that had all this scientific razzmatazz, that took all these gadgets in, the ghost meters, the sensors, all this stuff that had that and turned the microphones and the TV. The people who read those articles believed much more in the place being haunted than the people who just said, go see, and the team went in and did that. So in other words, you can really let people think by changing how you present it in the media. So I wonder how many people that saw that video I did about the girl with the Ouija board flipping off like that, went out and bought a Ouija board and thinking like, ooh. because again, so the media really has an important on our mind here. Okay, let's do some scientific examples. We're going to talk about the God helmet, men who stare at goats, RAM, and other extreme drug-induced states, sense presence effect, and other neuropsychiatric data. Over 100 years ago, William James, famous Harvard professor, wrote Varieties of Religious Experience. Why do all these people in different religions have these different experiences, and what does it mean? This is Dr. Persinger, and he is a neuroscientist in Sudbury, Laurentian University at Sudbury, Ontario. And he's the inventor of what he called the God helmet. So he's got this low budget, got this motorcycle helmet, and you can see on the sides here, he's got a bunch of gadgets. Those are magnets that he's got hooked up there. And so he's going to stimulate this part of the brain. And if you don't recognize that guy, it's Richard Dawkins, supreme atheist. So he's going to have a little fly in this. And what it does is stimulates the temporal part right in here. So it gives magnetic pulses. And what do we find? People have some pretty wild experiences wearing this helmet. Sensations that can be described as supernatural or spiritual, outer-body experiences, a presence in the room, bizarre distortions of body parts, profound feelings of being in contact with God, saints or angels, aliens, or another. Most of these were from stimulation of the left hemispheric temporal lobe. So that's interesting. Not everybody, but the people put on it. They didn't know what they were supposed to experience, by the way. So here, put this on and tell me what you experienced. Pretty interesting. Then on the right side, they said, well, let's see what happens on the right side. Often, not always, people had terrifying experience reporting seeing the devil, being grabbed by an alien, even being dragged to hell. Whatever causes these experiences, they're clearly a strong example of agenticity. There's more and more evidence that when the left and right brains are out of sync, that a feeling like these can manifest. So we have a right brain and a left brain, and when they're all working together, everything's cool. When they get a little bit out of sync, there's like, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something that's not quite right here. There's some other experience there. There's some other thing. There's some other something and going on. And we, because of agency, think it's out there. We're trying to show that, no, maybe it's in here. There's more and more evidence that when left and right brains are out of sync, I just mentioned that. Phantom limb sensations and pain. Great experiment by Ramachandra. We have a big problem in medicine with people that have phantom limbs. So they lost their leg or their arm. They come back from Afghanistan or wherever. And they're still having pain in it. Pain. And we give them narcotics and it doesn't help much. But my leg is killing me. You don't have a leg. I mean, it's a nasty problem. Right? Ramachandra figured out a sneaky way on how to treat that. So let's say you're missing your left arm. You put your right arm in it's called a mirror box. And you look in this, and it flips it, so you think you have a left arm. And when he has people do this for periods of time, their phantom limb pain goes way, way down, in some cases away. The brain thinks, I do really have that limb. Pretty neat stuff. And the book, if you want to know more, A Brief Tour of Human Consciousness by Ramachandra, and he's a neuroscientist. Oliver Sacks, who we're familiar with, is a great neurologist, just gives him tons of praise on this. The hypothesis for much of this research is that paranormal experiences are illusions created by the brain, and that tiny changes in electrical activity in certain areas of the brain can create powerful hallucinations that seem absolutely real. Now we're getting more into transcranial magnetic stimulation. This is a research area. Let's try magnets in other places for treating depression or other things. Or you can go back and get one of these. This is telephone to the dead. So you go to this person, they got this telephone, and they'll dial up your dead person. I thought that's kind of neat. Maybe some of you bike riders know about RAM. Ride across America. It's a race. You start at the coast, you go to the other coast. First one gets there wins. Well, don't you stop for rest and take like rag bike? First one gets there wins. Many days. So what happens? These guys go. They go day and night. I mean, it's just the most probably grueling thing in sport that there is. Well, halfway through it, I mean, you're maybe catching a half-hour sleep, an hour sleep. You can't sleep on your bike. Here's a guy, he's got water, those were lights, he can go at night. I mean, you just gotta go. We go all the time. Well, some interesting things happen. Some of these people in the middle of this, not most of them don't make it, by the way, but the ones that do or don't, they start going some real unusual experiences. Out-of-body experiences, aliens, the whole bit.
Oh my.
We know the people who do extreme climbing, mountains, Mount Everest, high atmosphere, way up there. There's some stories to tell, some of them. I was up there and this and that, and I felt this and this happened and so, well, anyways. Or extreme exhaustion, or dehydration. Lindbergh, when he flew across the transatlantic flight, it was so boring, monotonous over that time. He believed, and he wrote in his memoirs, that there was another, he didn't say person, another sensation of his spirit of being in the airplane with him. Possible mechanism. Just as the circulation system shunts blood from the skin and less needed organs to the central core and more vital organs when blood pressure is low. So if we're going into shock, boy, body's not stupid. It makes our hands get cold and our feet and sweat, and that's okay. It wants to bring the blood in close to keep our vital organs going. Natural survival value. Perhaps the brain shunts blood from the neocortex, the higher parts, the thought processes, to the more basic limbic system that controls respiration, the more primitive parts, as a mechanism of survival. So what we all know is drugs. What do most people in most religions and most shamans, other than maybe some of ours, psychedelic drugs, right? Either for people or certainly for the shamans to go into some kind of trance, because it goes into they're having these experiences with whatever. And where is it going? And they're here or there, but we know it's chemicals just in their brain. Why do different people experience different perceptions under these extreme circumstances? I would posit for my theme that belief comes first and explanation and meaning second. And what we experience depends to a large degree on one's beliefs. So, example, Joe Simpson is a famous mountaineer who nearly died after he was coming down from 20,000-foot peak in Peruvian Andes. While struggling to get back to base camp, he suddenly heard a voice in his head that gave him aid and comfort. It was crystal clear, he said. And he first thought it was coming from his cassette tape player. He attributed this to his sixth sense and said that it was instrumental in saving his life. And something kicked in, and I had this, keep going, Joe, and it's just the sixth sense that he had. William McKinley wrote a book, The Lost Voyage of the Carlook. This is kind of like Shackleton. Remember him down in the Antarctic? Well, he was an Arctic explorer. The boat got caught in ice, and half of them died. It was a nasty situation. Well, he had this experience. Vividly describes a sense presence as he made his way back to the ship that, quote, filled me with an exultation beyond any earthly feeling. I felt wholly convinced that no agnostic, no skeptic, no atheist, no humanist, no doubter would ever take from me the certainty of the existence of God. Interesting. Simpson was an atheist, and McKinley deeply religious. So, what we're concluding is maybe when the brain is under extreme dehydration, part of it isn't functioning right, and we have these experiences, how we interpret them is based on our frame of reference. Oh, it's God talking to me. Oh, it's a sixth sense. It's ESP. It's an alien coming in. Okay? So we're not downplaying the experiences. What about ESP? Many people believe in it. So does the U.S. government. A lot of people got this ESP. Gee, 94% of people. Extrasensory. That's above all the stuff we can measure. People believe it. Everybody see this movie?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you ought to. It's fun. It's based on a book. True. U.S. government decided in the 70s, 80s, that if we could get a bunch of people, soldiers, trained in ESP, they could go and use the ESP to take on the enemy. If we didn't have some guns, we could get them to mind, go in villages and change their minds and use ESP. So they recruited hundreds of people that they thought had this ESP ability. And the movie is funny as heck about this group that does it. And one of the things that they claimed they could do is the guy would stare at this goat, and he keeps staring at the goat, and the goat would just die. That's why they call it staring at goats. Well, in reality, they looked it up, and the goat's heart rate dropped 10 points. But again, so the government bought into this because they thought, hey, this ESP stuff, we can use this in warfare. Just about done, and then we'll wind up. What about meditation? A certain area of the brain in the posterior superior parietal lobe seems to orient our body in physical space. Can tell the difference between you and not you. That feeling of, I'm here, I'm not here, there's something going on. And this part of the brain is quiescent during prayer and deep meditation, such as witnessed during functional MRI. So we can watch the brain and tell when you really quiet it down. Now you're just pretending to meditate. But Buddhist monks and Catholic nuns report at oneness with the world and a deep contact with the transcendent. Is it possible this may also occur under extreme and unusual conditions? So here's other things that we talked about. Meditation, by shutting off, and we watch this part of the brain just goes quiet. And when that part goes quiet, we have this feeling of the separation between us and this, again, interpretation. And we don't care what part of the brain it is, but it's area 3 up there. And with that, I'm going to pause and call this session closed and tell you what's coming up next. So what I want to show in the next part is we have a chemical basis for belief. And it's based on a chemical called dopamine. And when we do things, we get rewarded by dopamine. So we do them again. And I'll try to go on to show that anything we do work on that system. That whether it's mathematical beliefs that we do, or it's religious beliefs we do, or it's moral beliefs that we do, we use the same type system of processing and belief. And I think we'll have fun seeing what that does. And then, with that little brief part, then we're going to hop into and take a deeper look at ESP, conspiracy theories, politics. You love to see what functional MRIs show of politicians' brains. I'm serious, that's pretty heavy. Because they've done this. They take people at one end of the spectrum and put them in a functional MRI and give them questions or stuff, and what goes on in their little heads. And it's fun to watch. Where do the little brain things go? And trust me, we can do this now, and the data is going to be interesting and fun. So, thank you for your time and attention, and I'll tally these up and see how you guys compare to the other group, but did well. So, thank you.
Thank you. I know you'd like this class to go on until about the 4th of July, but we did come to the end of it. The first class of Dr. J.R. Paulson course, and we'll see you all back here next week. And please come a little early because, as you can see, we have a room full and a lot of people to get seated. See you next week. Thank you, J.R.